she's got her tutu in her tape, and she's...
Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the New Canaan Board of Education this Monday, January 6th, 2025. Happy New Year. If we can all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to move to review and approve the agenda for January 6, 2025. Can I get a motion, please? Matt Campbell, second. Penny, all in favor? Excellent, thank you. And then next, we'll be approving the minutes of December 16th, 2024. Can I get a motion, please? Phil, second. Penny, all in favor? Thank you very much. Abstain. And Julie, I didn't see your hand, and I know that you're not feeling great, but I assume that you raised your hand for both of those?
No, I'm with you. I
Awesome. No, I get it. Thank you so
Sorry,
much.
I'm trying to figure
No
out
worries.
Yeah.
Next, comments from the public. To ensure the public's right to be heard, the board set aside time during each meeting for public comment. 2 minutes will be allotted each speaker with a maximum of 15 on each subject. Who would like to approach the board this evening?
Is that microphone turned on?
It's not on.
If it's red, it's off. If it's green, it's on.
Okay, there we go. Good evening. Tonight I have 2 messages to offer: young minds and the gravitas of required reading. The core mission of the whole enterprise of education is forming young minds. We teach them content, we teach them how to think about content, and we teach them how to apply what they have learned. This is a sacred task entrusted by parents to educators. The young minds of children 5 through 18 are like putty in our hands. Therefore, the literature we require must be the best. Now, the publishing industry calls the Alexi book young adult literature, and a lot of other books, right? I am here to suggest that middle and high school students are not adults. They are not young adults, they are adolescents. Indeed, medical research tells us that the frontal lobe of the brain, the seat of judgment and decision-making, is not fully formed until at least the mid-20s. We don't allow our young people to go to war until they are 18, to drive until 16, or to purchase alcohol till 21. Why? Because their minds are still forming. Likewise, we are responsible for the images we cause to be imprinted on those minds. Second, required reading in the formality of the classroom is not like any other reading we do in our lives. And unless they become humanities majors in college, it is possibly the only literature they will read in a serious format for the rest of their lives. The presumption is that required reading texts come with a thoughtful selection and academic stamp of approval of professionals. Required ELA curriculum needs to be the best in the English canon. As the review committee does its work, it needs an operative question. If that question is, should the Alexi book be removed or kept, there will likely be division and the book becomes a political football. Here's a better question. Is the Alexi book among the 40 or so best works we can offer to our young people in grades 6 through 12? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anybody else like to approach the board?
I'm sorry, just for the record, you state her name, or state your name, just for the record. I know we...
Mary Ann Knog, 258 Park Street.
Thank you. Thanks, Penny. Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to our first action item of the evening. It's a donation from the New Canaan Community Foundation. Do we have any update on that, or?
Sure, love to.
Great, thank you.
So, an incredibly generous donation from the New Canaan Community Foundation. You may, you may recall that about a year and a half ago, we had a pilot program that we'd started. We called it our Cookie Program. It was for our students who were receiving funds through our free and reduced lunch program. which has a threshold, an income threshold, which you have to meet in order to qualify. And this was to give them a few extra dollars that they could use to buy more than just the lunch. And we called it the cookie program because really that was for the kids, from their perspective, the most important thing that they could purchase with this. Here we are 2.5 years later. The program is doing incredibly well. What we've been doing is putting a deposit into each account at the beginning of each month that goes for the kids, and they're able to use that in the cafeteria in any way that they would like. Last year, the program ran all the way through. We sold close to 3,000 cookies to these kids, and it was about 130 kids, so it's a lot of cookies, so that they could be like everyone else in the cafeteria. They also purchased over 2,000 sandwiches in the deli, bottles of water, Tropicana, muffins, chicken tenders, pizza slices, salad, bagels. So this gives them the resources to sort of buy extra if they'd like to and feel like everyone else. So we approached the Community Foundation again this year for funding for the program to continue it. And it's grown from the $25,000 or so that we had last year to be over $45,000 this year because the number of students who qualify for free and reduced lunch has increased. There's an anonymous donor who covers more than half of this, and then the Community Foundation's covering the rest. And we just heard this news over the holiday, wanted to bring it to the board as quickly as possible for your approval so we can accept the donation, put it in the accounts, and continue funding this for our kids and families.
Thank you so much. No, it's an incredible program, and makes me feel warm and fuzzy every time you tell a story. So it's incredible that we've gone from 25,000 to 45,000, and we can help more and more kids. So if we can move to accept a donation from the New Canaan Community Foundation in the amount of $45,200 for students enrolled in the free or reduced lunch program. Can I get a motion, please? Penny, second, Matt Campbell. All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. And then next, the superintendent's 2025-2026 budget proposal.
I'm going to head to the podium.
All right.
There we go. Excellent. Good evening. Happy New Year, everyone. It is wonderful to see all of you tonight. And let me start by saying good evening and thank you for being here to all the members of the Board of Education, virtual and here in person. To colleagues and community members, thank you for being here as we present the superintendent's proposed operating and capital budgets for the 2025-2026 school year. It's almost hard to say. Over 150 years ago, Horace Mann described public schools as the greatest discovery made by man. His belief that public schools are the cornerstone of our communities and democracy resonates deeply with the work that we do every day here in New Canaan. It's both an honor and a privilege to dedicate ourselves to this vital work, guiding students as they learn, grow, and prepare for their futures. This proposed budget reflects our unwavering commitment to providing an exceptional educational experience for every student in our schools. It's rooted in our district's mission to prepare all students to thrive as educated, healthy, and successful individuals. It balances this aspiration with our responsibility to serve as thoughtful stewards of the resources that are entrusted to us by the community. As you'll see tonight, the budget is far more than a spreadsheet. It represents our vision for our students, our investment in our shared future. And it also our dedication to continually adapting to and improving to meet the needs of today and tomorrow on behalf of our kids. The priorities we've outlined are guided by a clear focus on high leverage investments, maintaining our world-class programs, and providing for the safety and well-being of all members of our school community. Our schools are exceptional, not just because of what happens in the classrooms, but because of the powerful partnerships between students, family, staff, and the broader New Canaan community. It's this shared commitment that enables us to achieve remarkable results year after year. So I look forward to walking through this proposal with you tonight, highlighting how it aligns with our mission, vision, values, and goals. And as always, I encourage your questions and insights as we work together to ensure the plan reflects the community's expectations and the priorities for the New Canaan Public Schools, and most of all, for each and every child in our care. The budget we're sharing tonight can be best understood as an investment in excellence. And the excellence of the New Canaan Public Schools exists throughout the system. From the moment our students step on the bus in the morning, when they walk through the front door of their schools, when they go into their classrooms, when they go into the cafeteria for lunch, when they enjoy recess outside, or maybe their free periods in the building, going into the library, going to other spaces that we have after school, when they're participating in extracurricular and co-curricular activities, and when they return home at the end of the day, they're surrounded by professionals who care deeply about them and about our schools, our district, and our community. In this system supporting our kids in schools, the Board of Education is a strong exemplar of the excellence that we all strive to achieve. The 9 volunteer members of the board bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to the governance of our school system, and your active and thoughtful service to the school, students, and the community, along with your outstanding efforts and the time, effort, everything else you put into this work, contributes to our system-wide excellence. And you do it on behalf of the children in our care, and we're all very grateful for that. We believe that the work we do in our schools is the most important work on the planet. And as such, it's incredibly complex. Our district is quite fortunate to have expert and dedicated teachers, administrators, and staff, many of whom had a hand in developing the budget that's before you tonight. I want to take a moment to thank a few individuals for their outstanding work in putting this budget together. First of all, I want to say thank you to our budget director, Pat Marinan, who's here tonight. While leading the work on the budget district-wide, Pat's also operating and managing this year's budget while simultaneously communicating with the audit committee in the town about last year's budget. And in all of that, she brings a poise and an expertise that results in the fine quality work that you have before you today. I also want to thank Sean O'Keefe, our Director of Finance and Operations, for his great work throughout the process. And of course, the rest of the cabinet, our Deputy Superintendent, Dr. Jill Correnti, our Director of Human Resources, Ms. Pianca, and Bill Tesber, who can't be with us tonight because, like our couple of friends on Zoom, he's not feeling too particularly well either. But I'm blessed to have such outstanding colleagues and honored to work alongside them here in the district each and every day. Our budget process builds from the ground up. And so I also want to share my gratitude with those administrators and program leaders and others who are on the ground doing that work every day. Our principals are here for the most part, those that are feeling well enough to be here. Bill Egan at the high school, Dave Gusich at the middle school, Sarah Grant at the intermediate school, Jan Murphy, Zoe Robinson, and Matt Kaskak. Our district administrators, Kevin Holly, Melinda Meyer, Laura Newell, and Matt Salvestrini. Our program managers, Jay Egan, Elmer Reynoso, Scott Olson, Michelle Santilli, and Ian McHugh. As we'll discuss tonight, school district budgets are very complex. And thanks to everyone's great work, I believe the document being shared with you now, and that we'll be discussing over the next couple of weeks, breaks ours down very clearly and very well, so that all of us can understand it and feel good about the resource plan that we bring forward. I'm extremely proud of the work that we do together every day. And this year's budget proposal is yet another example of our commitment to excellence across all elements of the New Canaan Public Schools. So as we get into the process itself, I talked about the building this from the ground up, and we didn't include the 25, 30 plus meetings that have occurred leading up to tonight. But as we now move the budget forward, it goes from being our draft budget document into the superintendent's budget presentation and proposal. And in a couple of weeks from now, as you know, it will become the Board of Education's budget proposal that will go through to the town. We are continuing to meet regularly now over the course of January with this superintendent's budget proposal. Tomorrow morning, I'll be meeting with the elementary PTCs over at East School at 9:30. On Wednesday morning, I'll be meeting with the SACs and the high school PTCs and PFA right here in the Wagner Room to have another conversation. And we will be meeting on Friday morning in the 220 Element of Budget Workshop with the Board of Education to continue to think about, talk about, refine, and understand the budget that's before you. The Ultimate goal being, of course, that on Tuesday, the 21st, the Board of Education confidently moves forward and adopts the budget as their own, and then we go right over to the town within a day or two. And we go right to the Board of Selectmen on the 23rd, where I will be sharing the Board of Education's budget and talking with them mostly about capital. We'll still talk about operating, but the Board of Selectmen's role is primarily understanding and evaluating the capital requests that are there, because then it pretty quickly moves right over to the Board of Finance, where on February 11th, we'll be presenting with the Board of Finance in the Town Hall meeting room to discuss the budget, and we'll continue through. And as you can see, the budget process itself will resolve in early April. So we start tonight on January 6th, and we look forward to wrapping things up on April 3rd. At least it's not April 1st, which it was a few years ago. So feel a little better about that. But ultimately, when you're building a successful budget, that's what it's all about. It's all about these building blocks of meeting with multiple people, having these conversations, talking, listening, dialoguing together, so that people understand why we're so passionate about our resource plan and why we care so deeply about the work that we do. It's an opportunity for us to really share with community and others that the work we do, how important it is to us, to our kids, that we are generatively co-creating the future by the work we're doing daily in our classrooms. And so we want these conversations, we welcome them, we look forward to them, and it's a lot of time and effort, but it's worth every ounce of it. Because in the end, we're able to resource the school district that I believe is the best in the state and among the very best in the nation. So how are we successful? What do we do? I think to understand the budget and the purpose behind it and the direction that we take, it's always important to keep the goals in mind. And as the board knows, annually we look at our objectives under each of these goals, and those will be modified and changed over time based upon the work that we're doing. Those are iterative objectives under the goals as we look at those with measurable, tangible outcomes. But the 5 goals themselves remain consistent. So they provide that true north for us in the direction that we're going. And they really outline those 5 essential dimensions of excellent school systems. So we start, of course, with our kids. Focus on teaching and learning, increasing student learning across the board as measured by varied assessments. We go then into communication and leveraging communication as a way to improve achievement, service, and relationships. Because we understand that's what communication's about. It's not just about us communicating outward, it's about a dialogue back and forth. It's two-way. It's speaking, listening, and learning together. We then go into exemplary practice, because we know that at its core, what happens in the classroom is the most important part of the work that we do. It's that interchange between a teacher, a student, and the content that matters most. It's called the instructional core. And so right there, goal 3 is to promote and support that exemplary instructional practice. Goal 4 is about the environment that we have in our schools. We want our schools to be places that kids want to come every day. That helps our staff to grow and to learn and to be their very best in order to best serve our kids so that they can have the best possible outcomes. So creating those environments that are respectful and welcoming and bring people together. And of course, overarching all of that is our responsibility to be the best stewards that we can be of every single resource and asset that's entrusted to us as we work with our kids. We know every dollar counts, everything we do matters, every resource, whether it's a physical asset or something else, all of it matters, and we work very, very hard to be the best stewards we can be with all of it. So a couple of highlights over this past year. I like to think of this as the return on investment. And the board, I know, is probably you're closest to this, so I'm going to move pretty quickly through some of these things, which is hard for me because this is my favorite part, because it gives us an opportunity to really reflect on some of the wonderful success we've had throughout the course of the year. But just a couple of highlights, of course. In this past year, our students we're still running at about 70% participation in athletics for our students. That's in one or more activity, which is incredibly high for a school our size to be competing at the level that we are with the success that we're having. We are one of the smallest schools in the FCIAC, the New Canaan High School, and yet we have most state championships and continue to outperform. And I think that's a testament to the work that goes on prior to coming to high school and to our kids' commitment and to the involvement and participation levels that we have. So in this past year, football, again, was a 3rd time Class L champion. They won the Turkey Bowl. I believe that was the 7th year running on the Turkey Bowl, but the 3rd time for the Class L state championship. We also had state championship in girls soccer. We had state championship in cross country. Of 7 possible state championships, New Canaan High School won 3 of them, which is stunning to think about, that great success. Our kids, the success matters. I think the participation rate and the number of kids that are involved is the best success of all, because we want all of our kids to be a part of a team like this, and it really is incredible to see. A couple of shots, that's our soccer team, our field hockey team, lacrosse, girls lacrosse, which had a wonderful season, and then our football team down below. Our visual and performing arts continues to perform incredibly well. Laura Newell's just brand new and is already having a positive impact across the board in our programs. Right here, we've got a couple of pieces from our students. Cows in the Fog on the left, the winner of the Gold Key Best in Photography for 2024 Scholastic Art Awards, and Sacred Heart University's annual Teen Visions Art Exhibition with juried artists, with our students participating in that. Again, it's an active and vibrant program that welcomes students to be a part of it. In VPA also is our music department, right? So we have our choir performing for our Meet the Choir night. We have that's our New Canaan High School band. It's a couple of kids that played during the pep rally. And it's an opportunity for kids to showcase their talents and interests with their peers. They picked up their instruments, got right out there and played. And the last is the orchestra festival, where we had kids coming together from across the district and playing together with our orchestra conductor. Other opportunities for students that we're able to provide for them include all of the co-curricular and extracurricular activities that they participate in, including our Model UN program, our debate club, other things you can see. This list gets longer and longer every year because clubs are created when students come to us with an interest. They just come say, hey, me and a couple of friends want to do X. And then an email goes out, hey, does anybody want to be an advisor for this club? And somebody gets back, I'll do it. And then they step in and they do it. And the kids start, whether it's once a week, once a month, every other day, who knows how often they meet. But it's student generated and they're involved in those clubs. Extracurricular experiences include our drama program, which continues to thrive, giving students opportunities in our intermediate school, our middle school, our high school. There's a upper division, lower division, even at the high school here. At the end of the year, we have the Drama Fest, where kids can write their own pieces and have those acted out and performed. We've got so many students, hundreds of students that are involved on stage, and for every kid that's on stage, there's at least one backstage doing the work, helping out with all the set design and the crew and all of that. It's a really thriving program that involves so many kids. If you saw some of our shows, these are the behind the scenes a little bit in Cinderella earlier this year, and some of the work they're doing. Again, other co-curricular experiences include our Cheddar Club cooking group, where they make quick and easy, delicious meals. They do Model UN, which won 3 awards of distinction this year at their Yukon trip. And then our broadcasting group, which covers our sporting events, football team, basketball, we'll do other things. So some are extracurricular, some are co-curricular, like the broadcasting would be co-curricular because that's tied in with a classroom and a class project, but like a Model UN or a Cheddar Club, those might be extra, sort of on their own and just interested with kids. But we try to meet them and support them and give them the opportunities that they want, because we know the best schools are places where kids want to be. And kids want to be in places where they feel that their interests are valued and that they matter. But that's not the whole story, of course. We've got to talk a little bit about what happens in the classroom. And again, I'll move quickly through these. I'm glad to slow down at any point. But these are some of the things that you have seen. Our students continue to perform very well on our Smarter Balance assessments that they take across the board. Overall results put us at the top of the DERG in the state in both ELA and in math. As we break that down, we can look across the grades and we see continuous improvement across the board as we move across. If you you look at the overall results at each of our peer districts, you see where we fall in comparison to those. And again, all of those districts and all of those performance levels are very impressive. And our kids continue to do quite well. Same across the board when you disaggregate a little bit more. This is ELA looking at the grade level. And then we shift over to math, and we see the same trends and the same work that we're continuing to improve and grow in the work that we do. And Dr. Crenti did a fabulous job sharing lots of those details with the board earlier in the year. Same with math across the board, again, highest in the DERG in the state. And then we go into those individual grade levels, and you can, again, see that consistency of performance for our kids, and that we consistently perform quite well. We go into the high school, and we look at our SAT results, and again, see excellent outcomes. Again, the scores, they're incredible across the board. These are very strong school districts everywhere, and we're proud of what our kids are doing. You may have seen the article in the New Canaanite recently, where there's a student who's been spearheading a project to offer SAT courses to students with a sliding scale scholarship for anyone who wants to participate on Saturdays. That's going to be starting soon. So continued work in this area. And of course, the number of AP courses offered at the high school, as we've really put a focus on this. And I did want to just clarify one thing from Bill's presentation. So in 2011, that was the year before I joined the high school. So when we started at 18, but when I started, really my first year was 2020, which started the upward trend that we're still continuing to enjoy today. So just wanted to throw that out there. But it's important. It's important. The courses that we do offer, you see we still have those core classes, of course, our English literature, English language, but we've added so many, the AP computer science, the AP computer principles, we have our music theory, the studio arts, those things. You see the calc, AB, BC, and stats, biochemistry, physics C, physics 1, environmental science. Some of those had been there, but like the environmental, the physics C, those are newer courses that we've added in over the last couple of years. The social studies in the middle, that's where the greatest growth has been. And by definition, social studies, that makes sense, that you would have that wide variety of options. So the micro, the macro, the psychology, the comparative, those are newer courses that have been added in over the last decade and have made a big difference for kids. And you can see over the last 5 years where the distribution of the assessments have been in the school. And so social studies is the highest, but then next is science, right? And then we have English after that, and math, and then you've got those few others that are in there. So I think it's important to look at this distribution, and you see that it is a reflective distribution of a student body that's interested in many different things and skilled in many different ways. Now, I know Bill did cover this, so I won't belabor the point. I do want to just share that to me, this is the most telling graphic around the AP work that we've been doing over time, because that green line continues to move upward in our performance as we more than triple the number of tests that students are taking, and more than double the number of test takers, the individual kids that do it over time. And it's important, you can see, I believe, the gray in the background, our student population hasn't changed all that much. So with the same number of students, we're getting a little better performance, an awful lot more participation, and that's what it's all about, giving students the opportunity to try something, try a college level course while they're still here in high school and have the supports in place. And again, that wouldn't be possible without the support and the funding and the budgeting and the resourcing and the long-term vision. I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, but it's really about doing small things today that will ripple and continue to grow over time. So back in 2011, when I came, actually the superintendent at the time said to me, take a look at the AP program, let's see if we can do something there. I think we should try to grow that program. And that was it. That one conversation started that kind of spark and I know the board has asked the superintendent to talk to me about doing that work, right? So that's how little investments today ripple into the future and build that momentum. The number of college applications by school, these are the top schools that were, or the highest numbers of applications that were sent. You can see, and you would expect, the University of Connecticut, and you can see some of the others over here, all excellent schools, of course. The enrollment numbers, we wound up with 11 students at UConn this year, 10 students at Syracuse, 9 are attending Bucknell, 8 at Northeastern in Michigan, 7 at Miami and Providence. You've got 6 at BYU in Indiana and Sacred Heart, and 5 in Boston College, Colgate and U of Richmond, and 4 at Clemson, that I have to say. But the really the thing is, our students, these are applications in schools that are possible for them, right? That we've got so many students who feel like these are schools that they're interested in and could possibly be accepted into. And I think, again, that speaks to the breadth of opportunity that we provide them so that it's not just a small group of kids that are sort of outperforming the rest. We really work hard to be as inclusive with everybody that we can to make sure everyone has as many opportunities as possible. So right now, 93% of our graduates are attending four-year colleges. And our counselors sent just under 3,000 transcripts to 341 different colleges on behalf of 309 students. So about 3,000 for 309 students. Okay. I started thinking about some of the other things we've been working on as a district and as a board, and some of the recent highlights that we've had. We've done quite a bit of work over this last year and a half around security. Right as we get in January, we have a school resource officer at every one of our schools. We have, just over the last year, we've improved our camera systems and our school security across the board. We've tied those systems together to make sure they're all interoperable. We finished an upgrade of our door access control system, which also, again, ties in with the cameras. And we've done other security enhancements, some visible, some not. When you drive into the high school, you see that little speed hump that's on the road as you come in. In the back, you'll see bollards that are around. We're working now to pull together the guardrails that'll go around our elementary schools in different spots. So we're continuing to do this work in visible ways and in other ways that the board's aware of in order to make sure that we are investing in and keeping our schools as safe for every kid as we can. We're also fulfilling mandates. It's part of what we have to do as a school district. So we just recently learned of our teacher evaluation professional learning plan was approved by the state. Likewise, we just heard our increasing educator diversity plan was approved by the state. We've revised the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding that we have with the SROs, to be in alignment with recent legislation, which we've had to do about reporting and the work that they do. And we completed contract negotiations with our teachers, with our administrative assistants, with our custodians, and with our food services, all within these last few months in this past year or so. So it's been very, very busy around that. And at the same time, we've focused pretty heavily on improving the student experience across the board. We're now fully open and operational with the Dome, and this budget does resource the Dome, some of the work we need to do, and the subscription into the software, so we always are using the most current software. We implemented our phone-free schools and classrooms. With our elementary, as you know, stayed the same. We have our phone-free schools over at the SAC schools, and the high school has a new system that they've been using with great success. We created an intermediate school in order to take the largest middle school in the state and create two smaller places for those experiences for kids and families and to help improve that communication. Our Literacy Academy continues to be a model. I had a meeting just today with colleagues from around the region, and we were talking about the Literacy Academy and how it works and what we're doing, and a very positive conversation and a lot of interest there. Similarly, we're talking about our special education transportation program. You know, how did we get going with that? So there's interest for other districts purchasing vans, and then we thought, well, maybe if we're going to the same place, we can share a ride, and we can share some of those costs. You know, so those are some of the conversations that are ongoing as we think about how do we leverage what we have in order to build sustainable models across the board. The transition to the 220 Elm for downtown campus and the alternative school has gone very, very well for launch as well, with a kitchen right in the middle. And as you may know, we have 2 students from a neighboring district who are attending our launch program this year on a tuition basis. And you know, they're having a great experience over there too, because they viewed the program and wanted to be a part of it. So we're able to do that too. We have a plastic reduction initiative in our cafeteria that I'm very proud of. Again, you're drinking out of aluminum water bottles here, which now we're selling in the high school cafeteria. We still sell the plastic, but the kids are buying the aluminum, and we're looking to phase out the plastic and use that. It's not quite as much of a markup on the revenue side, but it's do well, do good. And as you know, aluminum is completely recyclable, where plastic is not. So a better move for the environment, and I think the kids take to that. We implemented school dismissal manager at our intermediate school with success, knowing that if we were going to go phone-free, we had to figure out a way to meet the communication need between home and student during the school day. So that's where the school dismissal manager came from. We're having success there. The community partnerships throughout the course of the year have continued to be incredibly strong. Our PTCs and PFA are doing amazing work with the fundraising they're doing. The opening of the SACS basketball court was a great success this summer. Other fundraising efforts continue to go towards the well, you approve the money. We go towards the East School Outdoor Learning Center and other projects that are going on across the district. We mentioned our cookie program earlier, and earlier in the year we had that conversation with Dr. Eliza Pressman around the 5 steps to parenting, right? And so that was a great partnership with New Canaan Cares. So we're continuing to nurture those external community partnerships in order to leverage that and be all that we can be for our district. And then even the help that we received from all of the above for our parenting presentation a couple of months back with Scott Driscoll, Parenting Your Child in the Digital Age, which was well attended. So it's been very busy, very active. We've gotten a lot done. There's a lot more to do. But because of that, because of the work we've been doing, the commitment we've had, the momentum we continue to build, we also have externally received quite a bit of recognition. This year, we talk about niche. I do put that up because I think it's more holistic than most. And we've considered the #1 school district in the state. And you see the sort of the other numbers there on the statewide recognition, and numbers 1, 2, and 3 for the elementary schools out of several hundred across the state, which I think is wonderful. I've mentioned before, I'm pleased to share the #1 best places to teach and the #1 districts with the best teachers. So as I mentioned earlier, it means to me that we create the conditions for our teachers to succeed, and they take advantage of those conditions and continue to succeed. And I think that's wonderful. National recognition, I think, is equally impressive, where we look at number 30 in the nation out of over 10,500 school districts. And look at the bottom, number 18 out of close to 10,000 districts, best school districts for athletes. Again, that goes back to those participation numbers, the success that we have, that spirit that's here in the school and in the town. I think it's wonderful to see. Now, this is a budget conversation, so we also have to talk a little bit about money and the inputs. We've been talking about outputs quite a bit. And I mentioned before sort of the small changes we can make and the investments we make can build up over time. And what we see here, this is, I'll walk through this very quickly, but I believe this is in large part the result of strategic, high-leverage investments that we've made through the years, plus thoughtful stewardship of the funding, which gives us those outstanding results that we're getting in a comparatively lower cost. So what this tells us, the net current expenditures per pupil is a normalized metric that's used by the state. It's available on the website. It's the number that the state uses to determine excess cost grant reimbursement rates. So it is equalized across the board for every school. So that is, we can talk about what's in it, what's not, should this be, shouldn't that be, but bottom line is it's an equal measure for every school district. And so that's the NCEP. This is from 23-24, which was just last year, of course, so that's the most recent we can have. And we look down, so the highest in our DIRG is the Joel Barlow High School, which could make sense because high schools do tend to run a little bit more expensive than other districts, than elementary and middle schools. But as you look down, you see the NCEP rank. So out of 166 districts across Connecticut, which includes the regional, New Canaan spends 43rd most, which means 42 school districts spend more than us per pupil in order to run their schools in 23-24, which puts us in the second quartile. All the results and everything we were just talking about puts us in the top 1%, 2% of the state in our outcomes, but our inputs put us in the second quartile per pupil. The final column is ANGLIC, which is Adjusted Equalized Net Grand List per capita. So that's your wealth measure. So you've got Greenwich, Darien at 1, Greenwich at 3, New Canaan at 4, Westport at 2. Okay? So you've got your per pupil and you've got the ANGLIC there. So just to put this into context a little bit, if New Canaan spent the same amount per pupil as Greenwich in 23-24, our budget would have been $13.26 million higher than it was. If we spent the same as Westport, it would have been an additional $9 million back in 23-24. If we spent the same as Darien, it would have been an additional $4.1 million. And Ridgefield, which was higher than us this year, would have been an additional about $1.5 million. So these costs do matter, and we work hard to try to manage them and be good stewards of the resources that we're given. And so I think this speaks to that. Now, how do we do this, right? Is there some kind of magic formula to this? Is there something else going on? We do it actually by looking at our operational costs, drivers, and working really hard to try to manage those down as best we can. One of those is energy. We've been very, I think, progressive, very forward-looking on our energy management systems. We have our solar over on all of our schools now. We're going to continue to put more on there. And when we put solar on, we negotiate what are called PPAs, power purchase agreements. So we lock in at very low rates, and we cut out the variability and also the escalation that happens. You see some fluctuation here in part because when we were doing this work, we also had on-bill financing. So sometimes it might have jumped up a little bit because we're paying down the cost of doing other work, such as replacing out our lights from compact fluorescents and LEDs. That's very expensive when you have 1 million square feet. So we did on-bill financing to cover that at 0%. And so there's a little bit of fluctuation there. But when you look at the last 2023, 2024, we really start to capture some of the savings from that. With our heating fuel, you see that we had a couple of good years in costs, but now we're going to be completely off heating fuel because we have natural gas that's the oil. We're going to have natural gas at 4 of our 5 buildings and propane over at West, where we couldn't get the line run. So really, when you sort of aggregate all of this together, this is our story on our total annual utility cost over the last 10 years. Now, any of us would love this to be our utility cost at home. Right? Imagine spending less today than you spent 10 years ago for your utilities. And that's what we've been able to do. And it isn't one big master stroke, but it's continually working in this direction, working to be good stewards, putting on the solar, negotiating the contracts, putting in certain things, doing the natural gas work, working through that, all of those little things that we've done over time. The LED lights, that makes such a big difference when you have 1 million square feet. Putting in the motion detectors in classrooms so they turn themselves off after a few minutes. That makes a big difference. To work with computers, to have them turn themselves off at a certain time so that they're not running all night. All of that matters, and small little things add up to big savings. So, I mean, if you just had trended in 2014 where you anticipated the utility cost to be, even at a reasonable escalator, this would tell a very different story. You just flip it. So, I think it's just a good example of the stewardship that we bring to the work. And we know that the better we can control our operational costs, the more we can invest in our classroom and with our kids. That's where we want every possible penny to go. That's what we try to do. Yep. So the budget proposal that we're going to get into contains several primary themes that are related to both budget drivers and program improvements. Okay? Of course, the first and biggest and most important is our staffing, which is directly tied to our enrollment and demographic patterns, what we're seeing there. Okay? The budget, over 82% of the budget is salaries and benefits. So we're going to spend some time talking about that tonight with our close to 800 faculty and staff now. Okay? Other things, of course, the budget looks to balance our commitment to excellence with that long-term focus on efficiency so that we can continually improve the work that we do. We know that this is like a flywheel. This is momentum, and we have so much positive momentum, and this budget looks to continue that positive momentum by supporting our curricular instructional assessment practices, providing for those safety efforts that we've talked about. And we'll talk a little bit in capital. You'll see we have the PA system that we talked about, the classroom enhancement. It looks to focus the resources where it's needed the most. So we go into, on the whole, the overall budget request before you is for a 4.61% year-to-year change from 2025 to FY26. And as you know, well, at first I don't like this slide, so I'm just going to move to the next because it's easier to see. As you know, budgets, Board of Education budgets are itemized estimates of anticipated costs, right? So we do our best as we're looking at this to build these itemized estimates and to bring them before you in our request. But in order to make them as accurate as possible, we reforecast our budget every November, December to create what are called projected, so that we're not presenting a budget to you that's a budget to budget without taking into consideration current performance of the budget that we're in. So this projected numbers are where we anticipate each of these objects to land at the end of this fiscal year. So there are some adjustments that get made, and we do that because we want it to be as accurate as possible for you. The state of Connecticut defines how we set up our budget in the beginning with 8 large objects. That's what these are: salaries, benefits, contracted services, property services, purchase services, supplies, equipment, and others. And then, of course, we have the fees. And we'll talk about it. You see that fees are, we anticipate collecting $47,000 more in fees next year because we're hosting the Turkey Bowl. I'm going to leave that there. So you see the largest driver, of course, of a $5 million year-to-year change, 3.244 of that is salaries, and another 902 in benefits. But again, when you look at a Board of Education budget, you've got 82%, give or take, that are salaries and benefits, right? And then you've got a few other large drivers that Sean will talk about in a little bit that really make up over 90% of the year-to-year budget change. Doesn't mean we don't put laser focus on each and every line across the way, but it's important to understand those big drivers are sort of operational necessities. They are our transportation and some others. Okay. We do take a quick look, I think it's good just for the board to see, that at our distribution by cost center. So we divide our budget really by those 8 objects, but in our development, we look at it by cost center, and then it aggregates up into those objects. And so we're able to disaggregate it back out by cost center to make sure we have parity across the board. And as expected, East is the largest school. You'll see that's a little bit larger. Then you have South, and then you have West, which has the smallest K-4 population, and then the preschool, which is layered into that as part of our special education, right? And you've got Saxon and the high school, both with the 4 grades that are running about the same. And then you've got athletics, VPA, curriculum and instruction in there, innovation tech, district admin, facilities, transportation, and then benefits with that's pulling out the ISF in that benefit number. But again, we're seeing parity with the 3 elementaries and with our 2 larger buildings, which is something that we look for. Now, our staffing plan, which is the first part of the book, and because we know staff is what drives the budget. So we look very, very closely at the staff space, place by place, and really look at that plan, look at our enrollment, look at our distribution of folks. And what you see in this year's budget, we're going down 1 overall FTE. You're not going to see a budget impact on that, though, because that FTE is currently funded through a grant. So it was a grant that we had a short window of time to use. A few folks, Dr. Carenti and Zoe included, jumped right on it, found a great person, brought that person in over at East in order to help in the literacy for the remainder of the year. It's a grant that had to be focused on literacy, and it was a use it or lose it kind of thing. So we brought somebody in. It was actually serendipitous because, as you know, the East enrollment's larger than the other buildings, and it's really a very helpful position. But we're not going to be continuing that position as we go forward. So the budget funding levels stay the same as far as the staffing go. So before I go into this, just say. So as I mentioned, we'll go into enrollment for a sec and just look at a couple of things for next year and for what comes next. But we do feel, given where we are, what enrollment's projected to be, and then we have to do that in light of, or at least in somewhat consideration of what's to come. We're thinking that this is a year to maintain a stable faculty and staff, support the folks that we have, stay with our current staffing model, and continue to monitor the 26-27 enrollment and beyond. So that's where why we're making that decision across the board here. So looking at our enrollment, and I know, again, Darlene had shared the enrollment projections earlier. I don't know that we've seen these slides necessarily in this way up on the screen, so I did want to just take a moment to talk about it. What we have here is our projected district enrollment, starting with this 24-25 year with 3990. You see there's a little bit of a dip next year, about 50 kids, give or take, going into 25-26. But then we start our increase 26-27 and beyond. And you see 10 years is a long time to forecast. We know that. And it's always more accurate within the first 5 and even a little more accurate within the first 3. But we have been tracking this over the last couple of years, and it's moved its way through in these projections as we've seen. The when we look at it a little bit more granularly, we see that the increase, as you know, is really concentrated in the kindergarten and the elementary. And so we have, starting with that 26-27 year, the kindergarten is jumping up about 120 kids over what we had the year before. And then those numbers continue to compound as that kindergarten becomes first grade and then largers come in. There's an art and a science to enrollment projections. We know that, but we do have to pay attention. Another way to look at it, I think this might be the most helpful way. The 24-25 is the one with the line right through it, and that breaks it down with the elementary in the bottom, the middle in the middle, that's 5 through 8, and then the high school at the top. So you see that if the numbers were to materialize, that we'd be moving from this year, we have 1,458 students in our K-4 program, and in 23-24, they anticipate 1,991. Right? So you're looking at an increase of almost 1,000 students district-wide if those numbers were to materialize over 10 years. And I can't stand here and say they will, but I also can't stand here and say they won't. Right? So that's one of our challenges, and why we have our facilities committee, why the conversations have continued, why we've been doing some research and charting a path forward with all of it. So where it brings us in the K-8 is a flat enrollment model or staffing model based on the enrollments that we have and anticipate. These are the same numbers that we have today. We have used in the past something called an enrollment variability projection. We don't feel the need to use that. I think that there's enough. The staff should, if it materializes this way, you see we hit our goals of the elementary, trying to be sort of closer to 18 as a target, and maybe going up, so being 17.7 up to 18.8, that we feel comfortable with that range. And then we get into the 5 through 8. Overall, the total K-8 students, that's 2,829 kids with 144 sections for an average class size of 19.6. It gives us 30 sections at East, 26 over at South, 24 over at West, plus the 5 pre-K still over at West. We did have some conversation, I know in our workshop and otherwise, about sort of some staffing investments. And we thought hard about each of these and made a decision at this point to defer them for the budget. Really doing that in part because we do feel there are some other ways to maybe meet the goals of the requests. And because we really feel, and given the enrollment projections and other things, this is a year to catch our breath, take a deep breath, and then sort of plan forward for that 2026 and beyond. So in the math lab, I know Bill spoke passionately about that in our workshop. And we had an intern who was doing that. That work just wrapped up for him. Our thinking is we're going to try to find another intern next year who perhaps could do that same kind of work for us to help the kids for that year. The team leaders at SACS, we have a system now that we've been working through to do that. The school counselors, I just shared the 300 give or take kids and 3,000 applications that were sent out. It's a lot for them, but they're doing it, and I think we're in a good place with them now with the number that we have. We'd love to expand our coaching model, but we feel like we want to talk more with the board about that in the next couple of meetings and share an update on how that's going. We feel like it's going very, very well, but also understand that we want to, again, take step at a time and just continue to build in the momentum that we have, and also invest in what we have. Sometimes it's, I think, wise to invest in what you have, so continue to refine and to build the capacity around the system that's in place, and that's what we're looking to do. Ultimately, we'd love to have another librarian over at SACS as well, because of the 90 minutes between the two arrivals. Having one librarian causes a bit of a problem with classes and otherwise, but we hold on that as well. I mentioned before about the energy costs, just on a short-term basis. If we just look at 2022, and all this is in the book, so I figured it's just an interesting comparison to see. Just from 2022 to what we're proposing for 25-26, we're only looking at a 3.3% increase in the use of the heating fuel. That's the natural gas number, I believe. And then in the electricity line, again, 2022, we spent $1.23 million. And this next year, we're looking at just, $1,074,000. So a decrease of 13% in our electricity. And again, that is a result of the work we've done. Even I've mentioned those things that we've done. We've also done energy management systems that are in place across the board. that allow us to optimize but the heating, the cooling. It allows it. We get notifications if things are going sideways. We had an issue over at South on the first day back from the break. Those of you with children over at South are well aware of that. We're still serving cold lunches there. I apologize for that. We're trying to get that fixed. But jumped right on and right into it and solved those problems as quickly as we could. Another thing we've done with our staffing, of course, is to in-source expertise. So we have electricians, we have plumbers, HVAC technicians. We have folks that are trained and certified, they are licensed in doing this work, and that helps us to keep the costs down. So when we bring people in, it's because there's something significantly wrong. Like what happened at South on Thursday was a squirrel met his demise in the power lines. And so we had to get Eversource out there and get them to fix it. So, anyway. There are some other, so salary is obviously the biggest driver. There are other non-salary items of note in the budget here, and I'm going to turn it over to Sean in a minute or two. On Friday at our budget workshop, Joe is going to join us, Joe Spurgeon, our insurance consultant. So instead of showing his exhibits, I thought let him talk with the board and go through that with you on Friday. Then we'll build some of those in when we start thinking about how we're going to talk about the budget to the Board of Finance and others. So that's at our workshop. We're excited about that. The good news is that we haven't had any bad news about our insurance. Right? So if you don't have any bad news about how your insurance plan is performing, then that's good news. So we're looking at, in this budget, a 4.55% year-to-year increase for our ISF contribution. If you remember, last year we were looking at a 16% number as we came into the conversation and really sort of struggled to bring that number down. So we're in a good place to begin, and we'll let Joe get into more of the specifics around all of that. Our outplacements continue to trend below the average costs of outplacements. Generally, it's a 6% annual increase in the cost of a placement, where, as you can see, we're trending at about 4%. Part of that is because our numbers have trended down over the last couple of years as a result of investments that we've made, whether the downtown campus investment that we've made, the Literacy Academy now that is sort of fully operational and doing its work, the insourcing of BCBAs, the insourcing of OTPT, some of that work that we've done, again, investments of years past and recent years continue to, or are starting to have these kinds of impacts and bringing more and more kids back. So it's certainly a high number, but it's not where it could be. People say, what do you say, what's the amount? It's hard to put an exact number on that because it's really, you're defraying the cost. You're sort of, by not having to send people out because we're providing the education here. Or we are able to negotiate a little bit harder when we're doing that, when it's a unilateral placement, right? So the numbers can come in a little bit lower because we have programs. And I was hoping to have it by now. We haven't gotten yet the report from the state. The state came down and did an audit. They're required to do so through legislation with schools over the next 5 years. We were in the first grouping, maybe 25 schools statewide that were in the first grouping. They came, they audited our program, they went into some classrooms, some things. Then they saw our launch program, they saw our Literacy Academy, and they saw our downtown campus. And they've asked us if we would host visits from them with other districts into those 3 programs so people can see what we're doing here. I think it speaks volumes to what our goals were, right? Again, building these programs to help our kids. And that's what's happening. So lots of credit for them there. The textbooks, we're looking at new textbooks for chemistry. That's about $40,000 of that. A lot of that also is our world language online subscriptions, another $37,000. Those, they come due every 6 years, so we're looking at where time's up, so we have to continue to replace those. And then we're doing some bio textbooks, physics textbooks, some AP social studies textbooks. There's a new criminal justice course that we're looking at. So it's much of this is, the chemistry accounts for the bulk of the increase. And then we have some supplemental, so maybe we need to buy more books and courses that more kids are taking than they had traditionally, things like that. And we can get as granular as you like around that conversation. In software, the costs have increased in both support and licensing. That also includes like the video studio, the live streaming work that we do. Our instructional supplies includes radios for security and classroom technical supplies, headphones, desk phones, those kinds of things. So One of the challenges with Board of Ed budgets and any municipal budget is it's a lagging indicator, right? So we're doing this now and we're building this budget for the next fiscal year. If inflation is up, then every dollar is worth less. If inflation's down, then dollars are worth more. We know what's happened over the last 18 months plus, that with inflation increasing, the dollars are worth less. So we have to catch up with some of that, and that's part of what's happening with the some of the outsourced services, some of those other things. With if you hire somebody to do a job, you're paying more than you did a couple of years ago. Well, we built this budget, a year ago, the one that we're using now, and the one before that 2 years before. So it's a lagging indicator of those changes. So there's some part of this is catch up. And again, I think that when I think about this budget, I think about it as us investing in the excellent systems that we've built, the excellent outcomes that we're getting. We are resourcing our staff, our buildings, our community in the ways that we believe will continue to lead to the outcomes that we've been getting. There is a focus here on our professional learning. There's a focus on, as I mentioned, the dome and continuing to support and increase that. There's a focus on innovation and the work that we're doing. We are looking at AI. This room was just 3 hours ago, full of 50 people learning about an AI product that is approved through the Data Privacy Act in Connecticut to use. And we had somebody who was remoting in from North Carolina showing us how to use this in a classroom. Now, they purport that it saves teachers on average 7 hours a week, that they could then be with kids and building relationships and doing other things. I'd want to see that. But regardless, we're opening that opportunity for our teachers to continue to learn, use some of these new systems and programs, and continue to innovate in the classroom. So with that, I'm going to catch my breath and ask Mr. O'Keefe if he would like to walk through in the budget book itself. There's a couple of pages that we think are always very important for the board and others to understand. And I know you had a handout as well.
I did. Thank you. I inserted a one-pager. It's got yellow highlights on it. I just want to take you through that. It's a summary of the drivers of the budget increase. And at the top of the chart, you can see that the request is $114.2 million, an increase of $5.0 million, or 4.61%. And what you see below that is the buildup of the 4.61%. Salaries, the year-to-year increase of $3.2 million represents 2.97% of the 4.61. Benefits, another $902,000, or 0.83% of the 4.61. So salary and benefits in total make up 3.8% of the 4.61. Everything else is non-salary and benefits. It's a little bit less than $900,000 at the bottom, and makes up the remaining 0.81 of the 4.61%. So salary and benefits primarily contractual. Again, 3.8% of the 4.6. And of that all other amount at the bottom, $125,000, basically it's essentially non-discretionary. It consists of energy, transportation, and instructional supplies. If you could turn in the book to pages 20 to 23. It's a more detailed version of the year-to-year drivers of the budget. And on page 20, you'll see up at the top, again, the recap of the budget request, $114.2 million, increase year-to-year of $5.0 million, or 4.61%. Just below that is the number excluding the ISF. The town looks at it that way. They look at it in two different pieces, so we have it in there for that. But back to the 4.61, you'll start with salaries. Certified salaries is $2.6 million of the year-to-year amount. On the next page is non-certified salaries for another $250,000, and below that is then other salary funding needs totaling $356,000. The other salary funding needs is essentially planning for salary for bargaining units that are not yet negotiated, or salary increases for non-represented folks. Grid progression is for for teachers who they progressed, and they've progressed to another level, such as gaining an MA 60 or a PhD or so on like that. So we budget for that as well. And then we have two savings assumptions. Savings for leave of absence, so it's savings related to unpaid leave of absence. We've assumed $45,000. And then we've assumed $175,000 of turnover savings. So as someone leaves and it's a senior person, someone retires, we replace that person with someone less expensive. So total salaries, up at the top, making up the total $3.2 million. Benefits below that, $902,000, of which $808,000 is the ISF, and the remaining is the employer payroll costs of $94,000. So total salary and benefits in total, $4,146,337. Going down below that, contract services, total $159,000, made up of outsourced services for $128,000, an additional $5,000 for club sports, and some smaller amounts adding up to the $159,000. Property services starts on page 21, but ends in the middle of page 22. Total for property services is $252,000. And you can see that tech support and licensing adds about $56,000. Rental space and equipment related to the Turkey Bowl, we anticipate spending about $14,000. And then electricity and heating oil, we expect rates will increase next year. And so we expect about $148,000 related to energy costs. Purchase services increasing $358,000. Transportation and outplaced tuition make up the large majority of those two. Supplies up $137,000. Instruction supplies and textbooks, as Brian mentioned, chemistry, physics, world language, and so on. Equipment at the bottom starts at the bottom of 22 and ends on page 23, up $15,000. It's pluses and minuses, but one big item is that we're spending more, $15,000 in 26 on replacing football helmets. Other is up $15,000. Other expenses, not material amount. And then when you recap of all of the non-salary and benefits, $935,000. Brings to the total before fees, $5.1 million. And as Brian mentioned, we have fee offsets of $47,000 related to anticipated gate receipts at the Turkey Bowl. With that factored in, it gets you to the $5,034,784.
So recognizing that this is the first the board has had an opportunity to look at the numbers and to dig into it, we're certainly happy to pause if there are any questions that come to mind, but also we do have our workshop on Friday, and we're very happy to take any questions between now and then that we can discuss in that workshop or anything else. Whatever's best for the board, happy to do.
I think we'll save our questions for Friday
Okay,
in between now and then. Thank you.
sure. Well, then I'm going to go right into capital.
Yep.
Because I always give capital short shrift, and tonight I don't have to. That's great. Okay. Then let's take a quick look at that. And again, just before I go off of this slide, I just want to thank the PFA for the new signage where our kids are standing right here, right out front. So this was during the grad walk, and where the graduates walk through each of the buildings, high fives all along, and they just thought quickly, why not get them all around the wall right when it was finished? And there it is. So it's those kinds of things that our PTCs, PFAs are able to do that really enhance the experience for kids. And I forget who's in the Ram costume, but if I remembered and you asked, I still wouldn't tell you. Okay. All right. So our capital budgets, wasn't Bill. It wasn't Bill, no. It wasn't made for a 6'4" person. Our capital budget has three buckets, essentially. We've got our facilities, our technology, and then the transportation. And really, we'll start by talking about our facilities. What we've done is it's grouped by location. We have a district group, and then each of the 5 buildings that we have. And what you'll see is some of the things that used to be dispersed amongst the buildings has been aggregated and rolled up into the district. And the reason we're doing that is it gives us a little bit more flexibility to be opportunistic in using the funds. So what happens is so the painting is a perfect example. If this is dispersed amongst the 5 schools, and we spend the money at one of the schools, and then we have an opportunity to do more, but the money's not in that school's budget, we have to go to the town, go to the Board of Finance. It takes over a month to get that transfer done, and we can lose the window of opportunity in order to get the work done. If we put it in district, it'll still be used for that purpose. It gives us a little more flexibility to use it where it's most needed and in a more timely way. Okay, good.
Ceiling tiles is another example of it.
Right, so we put sacks because there was a question at the board workshop where we would start replacing our ceiling tiles. Putting them in the district means if we start doing sacks and maybe they come in for less or something else happens, it gives us more opportunity to do something somewhere else. So parking lot tables, all of those things. So we've aggregated those, rolled them up into the district, as you can see. Then when we get into the individual schools, because of the conversation we began about our enrollment and projections, we're really looking at just what's necessary at the elementaries. What's the safety piece? What must we do? And so what we found is some of the work over at East. East is the highest number of the 3 elementaries because of that playground rubber surfacing. So at the beginning of the year, we had, I think, 3? Yeah. Three trips for broken arms. Kids falling off the monkey bars in the beginning of the year. And so we thought, let's put this in. Let's put the rubberized surface there in order to help protect our kids a bit. It also opens up the playground to children in wheelchairs, which they really can't do over the wood chips or otherwise. So this would make the whole playground more accessible to them. Connecticut recently passed a statute that requires any newly designed and installed playground after 2025 to have the rubberized surface. So it becomes a mandate for any new playground going forward from 2025 on. And we thought, well, it makes sense for us to look at, what's the highest need for us and where can we get started with that with our kids. So that's the $250,000 on that rubber surfacing over there. Over at South, it's about just repairing the main entrance, the new water heater installation, reconfiguring the walkway to the playground. I believe that also would help students who are in wheelchairs to access the playground and doing that reconfiguration for them for ADA. Over at West, again, replacing the water heater, door frames and sweeps. Those are things that came from the Silver Petrocelli assessment that they did about a year ago. Some of those things that just need to get done. We go over to Saks. And we're looking at continuing that floor replacement program. This may be the final phase. We've done 1, 2, and 3 in the hallways and in some of the different areas in the cafeteria, others. This would finish up those hallways. And then we'll have a conversation about whether or not we think it's worthwhile to go into the classrooms. That'd be an enormous job to go into the classrooms over there. And maybe it's, I don't know, we'll see. We'll have that conversation together with the board. Things like replacing elevator mechanics, those are things you just kind of have to do because they're no longer servicing what we have. So we leave the car, we leave the outside, but you just pull the guts out and you put the new things in. Things we have to do over there. Then we get over to the high school, where we have a few smaller projects that will make a big difference for kids. Again, looking at the student experience over here at the high school. Again, not to speak through all of them, we do need to replace one of the kilns. We're not using it now. I'm glad to go into more detail. Don't think we need to. We know why that's important. But the big item here is that PA system, right? And as we talked, and I'm glad to talk about it more if you like, but as you know, we were able to demo it a little bit after the last meeting. What we're looking at doing, instead of just putting in a new PA system, we're looking at putting a system in place that'll enhance the audio in every classroom, every period with every teacher, and be a new PA system, and be a new bell system, and provide another layer of security across the building. So it's really, instead of just being kind of a one-trick pony, it covers all of these different things. And it's a system that we'd be using every day. And I think it would benefit all kids in the classroom. So I'm excited about it. We've looked at the number. It's the $903,000. As you might recall, last year we did have the PA system upgrade in the high school and at Saks in for about a total of $650,000, $700,000 for the two. We said we're going to pull this and look and see if there's a better way to do it. I believe this is absolutely the better way to do it because, again, it improves the instructional practice for teachers because of that projection of their voice. It improves the student experience, and it puts a system in place that positively impacts the education, the work that we're doing. And that, to me, that's the key. That's where the value truly lies. And it improves the safety network that we have in place, as the board knows, in lots of ways. Another item that's here, the other larger item is the replacement of the play clock over at Dunning. I know Jay spoke at the board workshop eloquently about that. Glad to answer more questions or anything else if the board likes. It was, I guess it was 14 years ago when I came as the high school principal. That was a brand new scoreboard 14 years ago. We were the only ones with it. We were the envy of everyone around us. And not many still have it. But it's 14 years old. And we can't get the parts. And if something does break on it, and it has happened, it's really a coin toss whether or not you get the parts in time to keep using the stadium. As you know, the stadium's used certainly by our school quite a bit, but the community uses it all the time. And it really is the crown jewel of that whole complex. So we want to make sure that we are taking care of what we have there. And I think back in 14 years ago, I think it was about $100,000. So 14 years later, time for another investment there. So the high school is a higher number there at 1.5 million. So the total, as we look at all of them sort of aggregated together, well, let me do the others. The maintenance vehicles and the vehicles in general, this continues our program of replacing 3 special education vans each year. We look to trade in the ones we have, trade up, do what we can. And then we have also a vehicle for our maintenance department. We tried a couple of years ago to take one of the vans that we're taking off service and make it work for our maintenance crew. I thought that was a great idea. Why don't we do this? It kept breaking down. It didn't work. So they really do need these vehicles. These are the vehicles for, again, our 5 or so maintenance crew. So when they come in, they pick up the vehicle and they're driving all day long, and they need to have all of their tools, all of their equipment, everything with them so that they can do their work when they get on site. Additionally, it continues our technology lease. As you know, this $200,000 investment gives us $800,000 of purchasing power, and that's our smart boards, that's our cybersecurity backbone, our routers, network, those pieces. We're also looking at our phone system, and we may be looking at doing something a little different with the phones. Right now, it's a very flat system that's not really hierarchical. You can't use it other than just like a one-to-one call. But there are lots of opportunities out there in technology and to use the phone system as another means of communication so that you could send a batch call out to a department or to a group. I could send something to all the principals or all the whatever. And one of the advantages to that is we're not staring at computer screens all the time with emails, right? So trying to think how can we try to find other ways to meet the needs that email in order to phase out of email in some ways. Because we don't want people to be sitting in front of screens all day. We want them to be out and about and interacting. And no one's getting fewer emails today than they did the year before, and you can just keep going backwards with that. Right? So that's another opportunity that we're going to be looking at. Anyway, on the whole, a capital budget request is just over $5 million. That tracks with where our capital budget requests generally come in. We're usually between $4.5–5.5 million. Some of the things that are not here, like the roof at Saks, right? So that's a large multi-million-dollar item that's coming. We're doing some more work around the planning for that, but that's something that we're going to have to do in the future. But as you see, we're really looking at the high school, looking at a couple of things at Saks, and doing just the must-dos over at the elementaries in order to create the space for the facility committee and the whole board to have some conversation about the future. That's our capital.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Any questions before Friday? I just have a comment. Thank you so much for doing this. This is a ton of work, and it's gotten more and more concise every year and easier to understand, which we certainly appreciate. And we appreciate the extra meetings, the extra work, and all the work that you guys put into this. And like the results are incredible, obviously, and what you guys are doing for our kids. And we've already gotten some news from some neighbors around the other towns that are not faring quite as well through their very early on in their budget season. So it's good to see that we're not having to make any really difficult decisions. A couple things that I know that we've talked about, you mentioned tonight that we're eager to learn more about on Friday. Just kind of more specifically understanding that we were under quite a bit of scrutiny last year from some of the town bodies as it related to consistently increasing head count when presumably our actual student count was relatively flat and even decreasing. And now knowing that it looks like we're going to be increasing our student head count, we're probably going to have to add more staff. So really just understanding where those investments were made, how we fared, what the results of those investments have been, so we don't run into those same issues when we sit before the town bodies and make it just a nice kind of easy conversation for everybody to have. And also just keeping top of mind that this $5 million capital ask is common, but it looks like if we are going to have that enrollment that the potential for having another school is a pretty big ask, and I think that on a lot of people's minds is also just like, well, where's that tax revenue going to come from? So I think we just really need to button this up so that we can put our best foot forward and make the town and the town bodies feel like we're really sharpening our pencils here, which I know you are. So that's all. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
And thanks again for coming and staying. We appreciate it. Drive safely. It's slippery. Yeah. So can I get a motion to accept as a first reading Superintendent's 2025-26 budget proposal, please? Brendan, second. Laura, all in favor?
Nope.
No, we're not voting.
First and second.
We can't be in favor of a motion? Yeah. I just got so excited. Okay, lastly, announcements. Actually, no, comments from the public. Seeing as there are none. Seeing as there is no public. The announcements of future business, please. Dr.
Sure.
Lutzy. Pretty quick.
Just to wish everyone a Happy New Year once again, and that we've talked about the meetings that we have coming up ahead. So looking forward to that, looking forward to those discussions and the dialogue together. And starts tomorrow morning with the elementary PTC and PFA. And so between now and Friday, if the board has any questions, send them to me in advance if you will, and we'll make sure that we have whatever materials or backup we need so we can have the most fruitful discussion as possible on Friday. We also have a resources meeting the following Friday, prior to our next Board of Ed meeting. And our next Board of Ed meeting together here will actually be on a Tuesday night because of Martin Luther King Day. So we will have that. I think it's the 21st. Is that what he said? Mm-hmm. But that'll be on Tuesday.
Excellent. Thank you. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting? Laura, second. Campbell, all in favor? All right, thanks.